Hello and welcome back to our quiet space. Take this moment to find your place of comfort, letting the day and all its noise begin to fade into a gentle hum. Allow your body to feel heavy, your mind to feel light. Here, there is nothing you need to do, nothing to solve. There is only the story. Before we begin our journey tonight, I'd love to feel the shape of our small community, gathered here from all corners of the world. If you feel moved to, leave a comment letting us know where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's a quiet wonder to think of us all, connected by this single story, under 1,000 different skies. Tonight, we are going to do something a little different. We're not following a single hero or a famous queen. We are going to travel back in time, and we are going to place you at the centre of the story. Forget the castles and the chivalry that Hollywood has sold you. We're going to dive into the raw, unfiltered reality of what life was truly like for an ordinary person in the Middle Ages. It is a world so different from our own that it can be hard to comprehend. A world where the simplest things, a drink of water, a good night's sleep, a small cut on your finger, could be a matter of life and death. So, dim the lights, let your breathing slow, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine, just for a moment, that you are closing your eyes here, in your own time, and waking up somewhere else entirely. Congratulations, you have just woken up in the year 1325. The first thing you notice is not the light, but the smell. Oh, it's a fragrant symphony. A subtle, earthy blend of stale beer, human sweat, goat, and something you pray isn't mould, but know in your soul probably is. Scented candles haven't been invented yet, and even if they were, they would just melt onto your dirt floor. The good news is, you're alive. The bad news is, so are the fleas. Your bed is a half-rotted straw mattress, stuffed with bugs and hay that smells like a barn floor because 3 months ago it was a barn floor. There is no memory foam, no ergonomic pillows, and definitely no Egyptian cotton sheets. There is just a single, rough wool blanket that hasn't been washed since last winter and now weighs roughly as much as a small cow from the accumulated grime. It is surprisingly warm, but it itches. It itches with the passion of 1,000 tiny, invisible creatures who now consider you their personal buffet. You blink your eyes open as a church bell clangs in the distant village. It is the medieval version of an alarm clock, only louder and somehow even less merciful. It doesn't have a snooze button. Your home is a simple wooden hut with one room, no windows, and a charming open-concept floor plan where your family, the livestock you own, and a thriving population of domestic insects all share the same living space. You try to stretch, but immediately regret it because the air is freezing, and your joints ache with a deep, unfamiliar soreness. You are, in this new life, 22 years old, which in medieval terms is roughly middle-aged. Your spine cracks like an old wooden door, and your knees sound like a bag of rocks being shaken by a confused peasant. Getting out of bed is a gamble. The floor is either wet and slick from last night's rain, which has leaked through the thatched roof, or it's crusty from something your neighbour's chicken did while it was wandering through your house. Either way, your bare feet are now officially part of the local ecosystem. And privacy? What's that? Your entire family, your parents, your 2 younger siblings, and maybe a random cousin who showed up one day and just never left hair or waking up right beside you. There is no bedroom, there are no curtains, there is no me time. There is just communal everything. Welcome to morning in medieval Europe. You are never truly alone, because parasites, rodents, and 8 other people are always with you, and this is just how your day starts. You have managed to crawl out of your medieval haystack of horrors. Congratulations. Now, nature calls, and it is not calling politely, it is screaming. This is the moment where you begin to miss, with a deep and profound longing, the modern bathroom. In this world, there is no toilet, no gleaming porcelain throne, no seat, no toilet paper, no flush, not even a mildly resentful plunger tucked in the corner. In the 14th century, relieving yourself is an adventure, a social experiment, and often a small public event. If you are a peasant, your bathroom is likely a simple wooden bucket kept in a designated corner of the hut, or perhaps just outside the back door. It is already full, because your Uncle Wolfstan had a rough night after eating some questionable turnips. The smell is biblical. You hold your breath, you do your business as quickly as humanly possible, and then comes the most charming part of your morning routine. You must dispose of the contents. How? You toss it into the street. Yes, the street. It is considered good manners to shout a warning first, something like "Gardilou," which is a mangled version of the old French phrase for "watch out for the water." But frankly, no one ever moves fast enough. The streets in a medieval town are not quaint, cobblestoned lanes. They are open sewers. A charming, sludgy river of human waste, animal droppings, rotten food scraps, and 1,000 mystery liquids you would rather not examine too closely. Navigating the street is a treacherous journey, a constant dance of avoiding the unidentifiable. A simple walk to the market is an exercise in focus and agility. If you are fortunate enough to live in a larger town with public latrines, a different kind of joy awaits you. Here, you get to sit shoulder to shoulder with complete strangers in a drafty, open-air outhouse where the concepts of privacy and ventilation are considered cruel jokes. You might make small talk with the person next to you, discussing the weather or the price of barley, but it is best not to breathe too deeply. And what of toilet paper? It has not been invented. Most people make do with what nature and their surroundings provide. A handful of straw, a few broad leaves, a scrap of old rag, a bit of moss, or, if you are feeling particularly indulgent, a scrap of wool. Sometimes nothing at all, which might help to explain why the friendly handshake was not a particularly popular greeting yet. And what if you live in a grand castle? Surely it must be better there, you think. Well, sort of. In a castle, you might have access to a garde-robe. This is essentially a small stone closet with a hole in the floor that conveniently drops your waist directly into the moat below. A brilliant idea in theory, with two significant drawbacks. First, the smell that wafts up from the moat on a warm summer day is breathtaking. Second, your enemies are well aware of this architectural feature. Yes, historical accounts are filled with stories of attackers and spies climbing up through the castle's waste chute. Talk about entering through the back door. So, whether you are a humble farmer in a wattle and daub hut, or a wealthy baron in a stone fortress, medieval toileting is a daily ritual of humiliation. It is cold, it is public, it is often dangerous, and it is never, ever not disgusting. One small slip on a wet stone path, and you are face first in the collective leftovers of humanity, and you still haven't brushed your teeth yet. That particular joy is still to come. You have survived the morning's unspeakable toilet adventure. You feel you deserve a reward. Perhaps a nice breakfast. Something warm, delicious, comforting. A small moment of joy to start your day. I'm sorry, this is medieval Europe. Nothing is comforting here. Breakfast, if you can even call it that, is a grim and joyless affair. There are no fluffy pancakes drizzled with maple syrup, no perfectly scrambled eggs, no coffee machines sputtering awake with their rich, comforting aroma, and certainly, absolutely no avocado toast. You sit down, or more likely squat, near the hearth, the only source of warmth in the chilly hut. Someone, your mother, perhaps, her face already smudged with soothe-hands, you a rough-hewn wooden bowl. It is filled with a substance that looks suspiciously like something that was scraped off the bottom of a muddy boot. Welcome to your daily ration of pottage. Pottage is not so much a recipe as it is an ongoing, edible science experiment. It is a thick, gloopy stew made of whatever grains, root vegetables, and beans could be found, scavenged, or grown. It has been simmering in the same large, soot-blackened pot over the fire for days, perhaps even for weeks. New ingredients are a handful of barley, a sad-looking turnip, a few wrinkled peas simply dumped on top of the old ones. It is less a meal and more a living document of your family's recent agricultural history. It has the consistency of oatmeal, but the flavour of vague, earthy disappointment. On the side, you are given a hunk of bread. But this is not the soft, fluffy bread you know and love. This is bread so hard, so dense, it could be used as a construction material, or perhaps to fend off a small, determined badger. It is made from coarse rye or barley flour, because wheat, the grain of kings and nobles, is a rich man's fantasy. This dark, heavy loaf is often bulked up with less than appetizing fillers. Sawdust, ground up acorns, sometimes even a bit of dried pea, vine to make it go further. This bread is not your friend. You do not slice it. You negotiate with it. You gnaw on it, your jaw aching with the effort, and dunk it into the pottage to soften it just enough so that you don't lose a tooth. And what about a drink? You are not sipping on fresh squeezed orange juice or a creamy oat milk latte. You are drinking beer. Yes, beer. At 6 o'clock in the morning. The reason is simple and grim. The water is trying to kill you. The local streams and wells, as we've discussed, are teeming with parasites and filth. So, you start your day with small beer, a very weak ale that is low in alcohol but high in survivability. The brewing process involves boiling the water, which kills off the most dangerous of the invisible monsters lurking within it. The children drink it too. No one is particularly happy about it, but at least it won't give you a disease that will have you writhing in agony for a week before you die. Do you want some meat? Or perhaps a slice of cheese? You can dream on. Those are luxuries reserved for special occasions. Sundays, perhaps, or a saint's feast day, and only then if your lord is feeling particularly generous after a good harvest. Most peasants do not eat meat more than a handful of times a year. As for fresh fruit, it is a fleeting pleasure, available only when it's in season and not already being turned into wine or cider. And do not even think about spices unless you are a king. A single pinch of pepper is worth more than your monthly wages. Salt, the most basic of seasonings, is so valuable that it is often locked away like treasure. So, you chew your gritty, sawdust-filled bread. You gulp your lukewarm medieval beer. And you try not to think too hard about the fact that a rat may have had a midnight snack from your pottage pot while you were sleeping. Breakfast doesn't energize you, it just happens to you. And now that you are properly, if joylessly, underfed, it's time to go to work. A day of back-breaking labour that your life absolutely depends on. So, you've eaten your sad medieval breakfast, and now it's time to get dressed for the day. Not that it will take you very long. Your wardrobe consists of exactly one outfit. One. It is a rough, heavy wool tunic, or perhaps a linen shift, if you are a woman, that you have worn every single day for months, possibly even years. There is no such thing as seasonal fashion in your world. There is just, wear this until it either disintegrates from use or gives you a mysterious fungal infection. Underwear? That's an optional extra. If you are lucky, you might have a thin linen under tunic. If you are not, well, you are going commando under layers of scratchy, sweaty, unforgiving wool. The garment has been lovingly stitched together by someone who probably had no idea what a straight seam was supposed to look like. It is functional, but it is not comfortable. There is also no washing machine. No gentle detergent, no soap, as you would know it, and absolutely no dry cleaner in sight. As a result, your clothes are stained, stiff with grime, and scented like a compost pile that has been left to marinate in a pigsty. Even if you wanted to wash your tunic, it is a monumental task. You would have to haul buckets of water from a river or a well, heat it over your precious fire, and then scrub the garment on a rough wooden board using ashes from the hearth or a harsh lime mixture as a cleaning agent. Then, you would have to hang it in the sun, which, in a place like England, is out for approximately 3 days a year. Most peasants wisely decide that a certain level of personal aroma is a small price to pay for not having to go through that ordeal. And let's not even get started on shoes. If you own any, they are made of untreated, stiff leather, barely stitched together, and they offer as much arch support as a banana peel. They are designed to keep the worst of the mud and rocks from directly touching your feet, and that is all. Many peasants, for much of the year, simply go barefoot. They walk through the mud, through the dung in the streets, through the medieval landmines that are sharp rocks and puddles of disease. All of this means one very important thing. Your skin hates you. You itch. Constantly. Fleas, lice and bedbugs live rent-free on your body and in the seams of your clothing. Everyone has them. It is not a sign of poor hygiene. It is a fact of life. Nobles have them. Monks have them. Itchy children are everywhere. Like walking insect farms. No one escapes. You might find yourself having a perfectly normal conversation with the local priest while casually scratching your armpit with a wooden spoon, and no one will even bat an eye. It is completely normal. Your skin is raw from the constant rubbing of the coarse wool. Your scalp is a battlefield of bites, and if you develop a rash, well, that's just too bad. There is no dermatologist, no hydrocortisone cream, no one to tell you that it's probably scabies. You just keep on suffering. And if you are lucky enough to not get an infection from scratching, that rash will simply accompany you for the next 6 months, like an unwanted and very itchy medieval sidekick. Now that you are dressed in misery and wrapped in a comforting layer of filth and parasites, it's time to head outside and start working yourself to death. Now that you are fully dressed in your finest, itchy, damp wool, it's time to flash that bright morning smile. Except, you don't. Because in the Middle Ages, smiling is a dangerous game. Not emotionally, but dentally. In your world, there is no toothbrush, no minty fresh toothpaste, no antiseptic mouthwash, no dental floss. The entire concept of oral hygiene is about as popular as bathing, which is to say, not very. Some people might occasionally chew on a twig from a particular type of tree to scrape off the worst of the grime. Others might rinse their mouths with wine or vinegar, believing the acidity would clean their teeth. For the most part, however, your teeth are on their own, and they are not doing well. By the time you hit your mid-20s, your smile looks like something that has been pulled from a haunted crypt. Cavities are rampant, your gums are swollen, red, and probably bleeding. And those aren't just food stains on your teeth. That dark, creeping discoloration, that's decay. You have more rot in your mouth than a medieval root cellar in late spring. Sugar, while not yet the omnipresent villain it is today, is becoming more common among the rich. It is imported at great cost and used in small cakes or to show off wealth. If you are a noble, congratulations. Your wealth allows you to rot your teeth out much faster than the peasants. If you are poor, you will do it more slowly, over years of chewing on gritty, fermented bread and starchy porridge. And toothaches, get used to them. They are like the medieval weather, always there in the background, a constant dull throb that can flare into a blinding white-hot agony at any moment. It's the kind of pain that makes you seriously consider praying, drinking yourself into a stupor, or simply pulling the offending tooth out yourself with a pair of rusty pliers. And that is not a joke. That was, in many cases, the actual treatment. Dentists, as a specialised profession, do not really exist for the common person. But barber surgeons do. Yes. The same man who cuts your hair and lances your boils is also the one who will be pulling your molars out. The procedure is a delight. It is usually done by candlelight, with an iron hook or a terrifying-looking pair of forceps, and with absolutely zero anaesthesia. The only pain relief available is a strong shot of ale, and the hope that you pass out from the pain quickly. Do you have an infected tooth? You had better hope you have a strong constitution, because without antibiotics, that infection can easily spread to your jaw, turn into sepsis, and kill you. From a toothache. That's right. The same problem that sends us to a pharmacy for a week's worth of pills could be your funeral in the 1300s. And there's no relief on the social front either. Kissing, good luck, halitosis, or just plain bad breath is everywhere. It is the normal state of affairs. If you are single and looking for a partner, you are not judged by the quality of your smile. You are judged by how much land and livestock you own. A few healthy cows are far more attractive than a full set of pearly whites. In short, your mouth is a battlefield, and it is losing the war, one crumbling, painful tooth at a time. Now that your teeth are throbbing in sympathetic rhythm with your itchy skin, let's head outside. Because your real job, the one that will break your back, is just getting started. It's time to head to work. Except there is no office, no desk, no ergonomic chair, no blessed coffee break, and absolutely no chance of a promotion. Your job, if you are like 90% of the population in this era, is simple. You must labour for someone else's comfort, and try not to die while doing it. You are a peasant, a serf. Congratulations. That means you work the land, but the land does not belong to you. It belongs to a lord, a distant, powerful figure who lives in a stone manor house or a castle, and who probably doesn't remember your name. You are in essence tied to this land. You cannot leave it without his permission. Your day is ruled by the sun. You rise with its first pale light, and you stop working only when it finally disappears behind the trees, leaving the world in a wash of purple twilight. Your tools are not gleaming machines. They are a heavy wooden hoe, a rusty curved sickle for harvesting, and whatever strength is still intact in your bones. There is no weekend, there is no clocking out. There is only sunrise to sunset, 6 days a week. Sunday is supposed to be a day of rest, a day for God. But that's only if it's not the middle of the harvest season, or if you're not busy fighting off a raid from a neighbouring lord, or praying feverishly for that infected blister on your foot to stop turning black. The work itself is brutal. The fields are ploughed by hand, or perhaps with the help of a slow, plodding ox, if your village is prosperous enough to afford one. You dig ditches until your shoulders scream. You sow seeds, walking for miles up and down the furrows, your back bent against the wind. You pull weeds under the hot summer sun, your hands raw and calloused. You carry heavy buckets of water from the river until your spine begins to resemble the letter S. No one cares if you are tired. No one is asking about your mental health. There is no human resources department. If you complain, you might be whipped for insolence. If you are a woman, surprise! You don't just get to do all the back-breaking field work. You also have a second, unpaid, full-time job. You are expected to care for the children, clean the filthy hut, cook the joyless pottage, spin wool into thread for clothing, feed the animals, and somehow pretend that your husband's lice infestation isn't slowly migrating to your side of the straw bed. And the children? They don't go to school, they don't have play dates or toys, they start helping out with the work around the age of 5 or 6. They are given a tiny wooden rake, or the job of scaring birds away from the crops, and a dream of one day not dying of the flu. And what if you are one of the lucky few who isn't a farmer? Perhaps you are a blacksmith, a tanner who works with animal hides, or a cooper who makes barrels. Great. You still work with fire, toxic chemicals, or animal guts all day long, in poorly ventilated wooden sheds. The pay is, basically, survival. The perks include occasional bleeding and the constant risk of losing a finger. Do you break a bone? Too bad. There's no paid sick leave. You are expected to keep working, or you will starve. Do you get a fever? Drink some warm beer, say a prayer, and keep going. You cannot afford to stop, not even for a single day, because if you do not work, you do not eat. And if you do not eat, well, medieval Europe has a simple, efficient solution for that. It's called being replaced. So, you grip your shovel a little tighter, you ignore the blisters that have formed on your blisters, and you keep digging. Because in the Middle Ages, your job isn't a career. It's a slow-motion endurance test. And you are just hoping to make it to the finish line. Now that your back is on fire from a full day of labouring in the fields, let's talk about the weather. Because in the Middle Ages, temperature is less about seasons and more about a form of ongoing punishment delivered directly from the sky. Let's start with winter. There is no insulation in your mud and stick hut, no central heating, no weather stripping around the door. There are just your thin wooden walls which have gaps in them that you could probably throw a chicken through. Your windows, if you have them, are not made of glass. They are covered with a piece of cloth, or perhaps a greased animal skin, that does more to suggest the idea of a barrier than to actually provide one. The fire in your hearth is nice, in theory, but you don't have enough firewood to keep it roaring all night. Wood is a precious resource, and gathering it from the Lord's forest is often illegal. Yes, you can be fined, whipped, or even executed for picking up the wrong stick from the wrong patch of woods. So, you bundle up in your one damp, scratchy wool tunic. You huddle as close to the dying embers of the fire as you can, and you still wake up with your nose frozen. Your feet are permanently cold, and often damp, from October through March. Your fingers are so stiff in the morning that they feel like tiny medieval popsicles. Frostbite isn't something that gets diagnosed. It's just called bad luck. Now, let's fast forward to summer. That sounds better, right? Wrong. In the summer, your one-room home turns into a sweltering clay oven. There is no fan, no cross breeze from the tiny sealed windows, and absolutely, positively, no deodorant. You sweat through your single layer of wool, but you can't take it off. Showing too much skin is considered scandalous, and it also invites a nasty sunburn, a swarm of insect bites, and the harsh social judgment of your neighbours. The flies are out in full force, attracted to your unwashed body and the lingering smell of last week's goat stew that is still fermenting in the corner of your hut. Mosquitoes buzz by your ear while you try to sleep, assuming you can even sleep through the sound of your neighbours yelling, their babies crying, and the local dogs barking at the moon. Out in the fields, the sun bakes you without mercy. There is no sunblock. There is no wide-brimmed hat, unless you have fashioned one for yourself out of straw, like a desperate scarecrow. And the worst part is, you still have to work from sunrise to sunset. Heat stroke is not a medical condition. It is just called taking a bad turn. So, you are either shivering in your own hovel, wondering if your toes will make it to spring, or you are sweating through your only pair of socks while your thighs chafe into oblivion. And the one thing that never changes, no matter the season, your clothes still itch, your food is still terrible, and your next day of back-breaking labour is always just a few short hours away. Welcome to climate control, medieval style. There is none. There is only endurance. Feeling thirsty? Need to freshen up after a long day in the sun-baked fields? Want to splash a little cool water on your face to wake up from this damp fever dream of a life? Too bad. In medieval times, water is not your friend. It is a beautiful, clear, sparkling liquid that is quietly trying to murder you. Let's start with your drinking water. The nearby stream looks fresh and inviting. It bubbles and gurgles over smooth stones, like something out of a fantasy movie. But spoiler alert, it's not. Just a little ways upstream, your neighbour Agnes has just dumped her family's chamber pot into it. And if not that, then a dead sheep is probably decomposing quietly in it a half a mile away. Or the local tanner is washing animal hides, releasing a cocktail of lovely chemicals and bacteria into the current. That beautiful, clear water is a microbial soup, a thriving city of parasites, bacteria, and the entire invisible army of medieval Europe's deadliest diseases. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery, they are all waiting for you in every single sip. This is why people drank beer. Yes, beer. Even the children. But before you imagine medieval kids doing keg stands, you must understand that it was small beer. It was weak in alcohol, but strong in its power of survival. The brewing process, as we've learned, involved boiling the water, which killed off most of the microscopic assassins. It tasted better than the ditch water, and it wouldn't send you to an early grave. Wine was another option if you were wealthy enough to afford it and unconcerned with being able to function properly before noon. And what about bathing? Surely water was used for cleaning oneself. In theory, yes. In practice, almost never. You see, a popular belief back then was that bathing was actually dangerous. People thought that immersing yourself in hot water would open up the pores of your skin and let the bad air, or miasma, seep into your body, causing disease. That's right. The act of washing yourself was considered medically risky. You were Apparently, safer if you never removed the protective, caked-on layer of filth from your skin. Communal bathhouses did exist in some towns, but they quickly gained reputations as places for gossip, scandal, and sometimes full-on medieval extracurricular activities. So, naturally, the church got involved and shut many of them down, declaring them dens of sin. Even if you did want to take a bath at home, it was a full-scale production. You would need to fetch dozens of gallons of water from the well, one heavy bucket at a time. Then you would need to use a significant portion of your precious firewood to heat it over the fire. You would pour it into a large, leaky wooden tub, and then pray that no one else in your family of 8 used it before you did. Or worse, after you did, in the same water. And rainwater? It was collected in open barrels, where birds would poop, insects would breed, and a thick layer of green moss would thrive. It sounds refreshing, doesn't it? So whether it's going into your mouth, onto your body, or onto your crops, water in the Middle Ages is less of a life source and more of a gamble. One wrong gulp, and you could be spending your final days sweating in a straw bed, clutching your stomach, and contemplating all of your life choices. The next time you turn on a tap and fill a glass with clean, clear, safe water, take a moment, raise a glass to your ancestors. They did not have the simple, profound luxury of hydration without hazard. So, you drank the water. Or maybe you didn't. Maybe you just stubbed your toe on a rock that was shaped like disappointment. Or maybe you just woke up with a cough. Either way, you are now sick. You need help. You need a doctor. Too bad you live in the Middle Ages, where medicine is really just a form of polite torture, often administered by someone with a very shaky understanding of human anatomy and a deep belief in the power of prayer and purging. Let's start with a diagnosis. Everything that is wrong with you, whether it's a cough, a rash, a broken bone, or the creeping, terrifying plague is caused by one thing: your humours are out of balance. According to the prevailing medical science, your body is governed by 4 essential fluids, or humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Your health, they believe, depends on keeping these 4 substances in a perfect, harmonious balance, like some kind of delicate, internal soup. Do you have a fever? Your face is flushed? You feel hot? Clearly, you have an excess of blood. The answer is obvious. You need to get rid of some of it. Welcome to the wonderful world of bloodletting. The doctor, or more likely the barber surgeon, will arrive with his tools. He might use a small sharp blade called a lancet to open up a vein in your arm, letting your excess life force drain into a bowl. Or, for a more targeted approach, he might apply a handful of hungry leeches to your skin. And yes, the barber was often the one performing this procedure. Imagine getting a haircut and a hemoglobin extraction in one convenient sitting. 2 for 1, baby. Are you feeling sad, anxious, or what we might call depressed? That is clearly an excess of black bile, which was associated with melancholy. The cure for that? Laxatives, strong ones. The idea is to purge the excess black bile from your system. So, you will be given a warm herbal concoction that will have you spending the rest of the day in that delightful bucket behind the hut, while everyone in your family politely pretends not to notice. Now, what if you break a bone, or get a nasty, deep wound from a farming accident? You are in real trouble now. There is no anaesthesia, unless you count being given so much ale that you pass out from intoxication, or simply passing out from the sheer, unadulterated pain. Surgery is performed with knives and saws that have not been properly cleaned since the last crusade. The tools might be heated over a fire, but not for sterilisation. No one knows what germs are yet. They heat them because they just look scarier and more effective that way. Antibiotics are centuries away. Germ theory has not been invented. People believe that disease comes from bad air, or from God being annoyed with your moral failings. Did you get a stomachache? It must have been because of your sinful thoughts last Tuesday. You had better hope you like confessing while you are vomiting. If your condition gets worse, you will be treated. with more leeches, perhaps some ground-up beetles mixed into a paste, and a priest at your bedside giving you the last rites, just in case. At this point, they are essentially preparing for the final, most effective cure of all, which is known as death. And if, by some incredible, unexplainable miracle, you recover, everyone will just assume that God took pity on you. The doctor will take full credit, and the leech will probably get a promotion. So yes, in the Middle Ages, medicine is less about the art of healing and more about the art of surviving the cure. After a long, grueling day of labour, lice and leeches, it is finally time for the evening meal. You shuffle back to your dark, smoky hovel, your stomach growling, ready for the one simple joy that is left in your life. A warm meal. Bad news. Your meal is probably also trying to kill you. Let's begin with the basics. Food preservation, as you know it, does not exist. There is no refrigerator, no freezer. There is only salt, if you can afford it. Smoke, if you have the time and wood. Or the desperate hope that the cool winter air will keep things from turning into a science experiment too quickly. Your meat, if you are lucky enough to have any, has likely been hanging in the rafters for days, covered in a fine sheen of dust and visited by every fly in the village. It might have been marinated in a questionable brine to keep the worst of the decay at bay, and it has almost certainly been shared with a rat or two during the night. You just cook it thoroughly and try not to think about its previous dinner guests. Bread, as always, is the cornerstone of your diet, but even that isn't entirely safe. During bad harvest years, when the grain runs low, desperate peasants will bulk up their bread dough with whatever they can find. Bark from trees, sawdust from the local woodcutter. Sometimes even a bit of clay to make the loaf feel heavier and more substantial. And if it's the rye season, there's a special bonus to look forward to: ergot. Ergot is a dark purplish fungus that can grow on rye grain, especially in damp years. When it is ground up with the flour and baked into bread, it becomes a powerful hallucinogen and poison. Eating it can cause a condition then known as St. 12. Antony's fire, which brought on terrifying hallucinations, convulsions, gangrene, and sometimes a horrible, agonizing death. It was like eating bread that had been accidentally laced with LSD and tetanus. Vegetables? They are available only when they are in season. And you know what's always in season in medieval Europe? Turnips. So many turnips. Boiled turnips, mashed turnips. Turnips floating sadly in your pottage. Which, if you remember from breakfast, is basically a hot swamp of mystery ingredients that has been simmering since your great-grandfather's funeral. Fruit might be available in the fall, but it rots quickly. And sugar is a rare, expensive luxury, hoarded by the rich to show off their wealth and their blackened, decaying teeth. Dairy is another gamble. Fresh milk from your goat or cow will spoil in just a few hours without refrigeration. Butter and cheese fare a little better, but they are often loaded with bacteria. People eat them anyway, because frankly, it's either that or trying to chew on your own boot leather. And let's talk about seasoning. Spices like pepper, cinnamon or nutmeg are worth more than gold. For the average peasant, flavour comes from a boiled onion, a bit of salt if you're lucky, and the lingering taste of wood smoke and quiet desperation. Most meals taste like wet burlap that has been sprinkled with sadness. But food isn't just a health hazard, it's a political one. The game animals in the forest, the deer, the rabbits, the wild boar, all belong to the Lord, not to you. If you are caught poaching a rabbit to feed your starving family, you could be fined, imprisoned, have a hand cut off, or even be executed. That's right, your dinner could get you hanged. So, as you sit down to eat your grey, lumpy stew by the flickering firelight, you remember that every single bite is a risk. But you eat it anyway. Because in the Middle Ages, food doesn't just nourish you, it tests you. It is evening now. You have worked, you have suffered, and you have barely digested your suspicious stew. You might think that the day is finally winding down, that you can finally relax. But don't get too comfortable, because God is watching, and so is the priest. And so is your neighbour Agnes, who will absolutely positively rat you out to the priest if you miss Mass on Sunday. In medieval Europe, Religion is not just a part of your life, it is your life. The church is not just a building in the centre of the village, it is the centre of your universe. It controls your calendar, your laws, your education, if you are one of the very, very few who can read, your birth, your marriage, your death, and pretty much everything in between. Think of the church as your spiritual landlord, and you are always, always behind on the rent. Every day is structured around the ringing of the prayer bells. The town church bell rings in the morning to wake you, at noon to mark the middle of your workday, and in the evening to call you home. These bells are not gentle reminders, they are commands. Missing your daily prayers is not just forgetful, it is a sin. And sin is everywhere. Did you forget to bow your head when the priest walked by? That's a sin. Did you eat meat on a Friday? A serious sin. Did you have a brief fleeting thought about your neighbour's wife in that one dream you had last night? A double sin, and you'd better confess it. And hell, you are constantly reminded, is very, very real. It is not an abstract concept, it is a literal, physical place, and the priests describe it in glorious, terrifying detail. Rivers of fire, lakes of boiling blood, demons with sharp, pointy pitchforks, and eternal, unending wailing. If the thought of dying from a plague doesn't scare you into obedience, the thought of eternal damnation definitely will. You cannot read the Bible for yourself because it is written in Latin, a language reserved for monks, clergy, and that one noble's kid who is considered too good for dirt. You must rely entirely on the church to interpret God's will for you. That means that if the priest says your crops failed this year because you didn't pray hard enough, well, you'd better get on your knees and start praying harder. And then there are the tithes. A tithe is 1/10 of everything you produce, and it is a mandatory tax paid to the church. If you grow wheat, you give the church 1/10 of your wheat. If you raise chickens, you give the church 1/10 of your eggs. If you have nothing, congratulations. You are not only financially bankrupt, but you are now spiritually doomed as well. The holidays you look forward to are not vacations. They are holy days. There are dozens of them throughout the year, and while they do offer a welcome break from back-breaking labour, they are not for fun. They are for attending Mass, for fasting, for confessing your endless list of sins, and for reminding yourself that joy is a dangerous and sinful indulgence. Questioning the church, or its teachings, is the most dangerous thing you can do. Heretics are burned at the stake. Witches, usually just women who know a lot about herbs or who don't conform, are drowned. Blasphemers are flogged, and skeptics are very quickly reformed through public humiliation or torture. So, you go through the motions, you chant the Latin prayers you don't understand, you bow your head, and you pray that your soul, after enduring this short, dirt-covered, miserable life, might finally land in paradise. Assuming, of course, that the priest likes you, because in the Middle Ages, God may be merciful, but the church, not so much. If you thought that being a medieval peasant was a rough and unforgiving existence, now try doing it as a woman. Imagine all the filth, all the famine, all the fear, and then add on top of that a life of near constant childbirth, complete subservience to men, and a profound social invisibility. In the Middle Ages, being a woman is like playing the game of life on the hardest possible difficulty setting, with no health potions and no restart button. From the moment you are born, your life path is pretty much locked in. You will marry young, you will bear as many children as your body can withstand, you will serve your husband, and you will likely die tired, worn out from a life of labour, both in the fields and in the home. Education? That is not a word that is meant for you. Unless you are from a very wealthy, noble family and are sent to a convent, your intellectual development will likely stop around the time you learn how to churn butter and patch a hole in a wool tunic. Reading and writing are skills for men, for priests, for clerks. Your knowledge is expected to be of the hearth, the garden, and the nursery. Marriage happens early, shockingly early. It is not at all uncommon for you to be betrothed at the age of 12 and pregnant by 14. And these marriages are not about love, they are about practicality. about land, about livestock, and about forging alliances between families. Your opinion on the matter is not required, or even requested. You are, in essence, a piece of property being transferred from your father's household to your husband's. Once you are married, you are legally and socially under your husband's complete control. Your job is to produce heir specifically, male heirstow, feed everyone in the household, to keep the home from falling into utter squalor, and to not complain about any of it. Because complaining might get you branded a nag, or a shrew, or worse, a witch. And that is a label that often comes with a complimentary drowning or a public burning, depending on the local fashion for executions. Childbirth itself is a death lottery. There is no prenatal care, no sterile, sanitized delivery room, no anesthesia. The village midwife does her best, with a collection of folk remedies and a great deal of prayer, but even minor complications can mean a death sentence for the mother, the child, or both. It is a terrifying, bloody, and incredibly dangerous ordeal. Some women might survive 10 pregnancies. Many do not survive their first or second. But don't worry, once the baby is safely out, your work has just increased tenfold. Now, you have a screaming infant in a lice-ridden, drafty hut, and you are still expected to nurse, cook, clean, spin wool, and help your husband in the fields during the planting and harvest seasons. You do not get a break. You are the break for everyone else. If you remain unmarried, you are viewed with suspicion. If you are widowed, you are vulnerable. If you are outspoken and intelligent, you are considered dangerous. Women who did not conform to the quiet, subservient ideal were often the first to be accused of witchcraft, especially if they had a deep knowledge of herbal medicine, a strong personality, or just happened to look at someone's cow in a funny way on a rainy Tuesday. Even within the church, the supposed sanctuary for all souls, your role is strictly limited. Nuns live under rigid rules, with no freedom of movement and no voice in the church's governance. Your spiritual worth is always ranked below that of a man. In short, if you are a woman in the Middle Ages, you are expected to endure, to obey, to reproduce, and to suffer in silence, ideally while maintaining a pleasant and uncomplaining demeanour. Because even in a time of almost universal suffering, women were somehow expected to suffer more gracefully than anyone else. So far, you have battled filth, starvation, social injustice, and possibly a goat that has a personal grudge against you. But just when you think your day cannot possibly get any worse, here comes another constant looming presence in your life. Violence. Loud, bloody, and often completely acceptable by medieval standards. Let's be very clear. The Middle Ages were not a peaceful, idyllic time. The concept of law and order, as you understand it, mostly means hope the local lord isn't in a bad mood today. Violence is everywhere. It is in the home. It is in the streets. It is on the battlefield. It is in church disputes. And sometimes, it's in the line at the communal bread oven. Crime is common, punishment is swift and brutal, and justice is often more about performance art and public intimidation than it is about actual protection. Did you steal a loaf of bread to feed your hungry children? The punishment could be losing a hand. Were you accused of lying? Your tongue might be pierced with a hot iron. Did you gossip too much? You might be forced to wear the skull's bridle, a heavy, horrifying metal mask strapped to your head with an iron bar that pressed down on your tongue, designed for correction. Of course. Now, let's say you are accused of something more serious. Heresy, theft from the Lord's manor, witchcraft. How do you prove your innocence? By being tortured? Obviously. Welcome to the trial by ordeal. In one popular version of this trial, you are forced to stick your hand into a pot of boiling water to retrieve a stone. Your scalded hand is then bandaged. If, after 3 days, the wound is healing cleanly without infection, you are declared innocent, for God has clearly intervened on your behalf. If it is festering and infected, which it almost always is, you are guilty and will be punished accordingly. Another delightful option is the trial by water. You are tied up and tossed into a river. If you sink, you are considered innocent and you are probably dead. If you float, you are clearly guilty because the pure water has rejected your sinful body. You will then be pulled out and executed. It's like a medieval game show where the grand prize is survival and the host is actively rooting against you. And if you are sentenced to death, that is a public event. Executions are performed in front of cheering, jeering crowds. Hangings, beheadings, burnings at the stake, these are the medieval equivalent of prime-time television. People bring snacks. It is a day out for the family. Domestic violence is completely normal. Husbands are legally allowed, and in some cases even expected, to discipline their wives and children with physical force. Street fights are commonplace. You could be beaten senseless just for looking the wrong way at a nobleman's horse. And war. War is a constant simmering threat. Local feuds between lords, larger territorial disputes, religious crusades. Someone is always marching off to stab someone else in the name of honour, God, or just plain boredom. Violence is not a breakdown of society in the Middle Ages. In many ways, it is society. Everyone lives with the constant, gnawing knowledge that life is fragile, justice is arbitrary, and your neighbour might just bash your head in over a disputed pig. So, you learn to walk carefully, you learn to keep your eyes down, and you learn to never, ever trust anyone who is holding a large club. At this point, you have made it through the lice, the leeches, the laundryless misery, and the looming threat of public disembowelment. But now comes the final, inevitable chapter of most medieval lives. An early and profoundly unglamorous death. If you are alive and still breathing past the age of 40, you are practically a celebrity. Your neighbours might refer to you as the Old One, which is less of a nickname and more of a statistical miracle. Let's break it down. The average life expectancy in this era hovers somewhere around 30 to 40 years. But that number is a cruel lie, because it is dragged down so heavily by the staggering rates of infant and child mortality. Nearly half of all children born will die before they reach the age of 5. Disease, malnutrition, or one particularly bad winter is all it takes. There are no vaccines, no antibiotics, often no hope. If you are one of the lucky ones who survives childhood, you enter adulthood already exhausted. Your work began as soon as you could walk upright, and by the age of 25, your joints already creak like a rusty monastery door. You are likely missing several teeth, perhaps a finger from a farming accident, and most of your original optimism. Women, as we have seen, face a particularly deadly gauntlet: childbirth. It is one of the leading causes of death for medieval women. There is no pain relief, no real medical intervention, just prayer, hot water, and someone holding your hand while you possibly bleed to death on a straw-stuffed cot. For men, the dangers are different, but equally relentless. A simple farming accident, an infection from a minor wound that turns septic, a drunken brawl in the local tavern, a pointless war fought for a lord you've never met. Even a walk to the market could be a death sentence if you cross paths with a bored bandit or an angry tax collector. Death could also come quietly, invisibly, in the form of the plague, which sweeps through Europe in waves, turning entire cities into silent cemeteries overnight. Or it could come slowly, through famine, which can last for entire seasons, thinning out villages until only the ghosts of the hungry remain. Or it could come from sheer bad luck, like eating that spoiled rye bread and spending your final hours hallucinating and screaming at the mud walls of your hut. And when death comes, the funerals are brief and practical. You are lucky if you get one at all. Bodies are often buried quickly and without ceremony to avoid the spread of disease. There is no embalming, no polished coffin, just a hole dug in the consecrated ground of the churchyard, a few murmured prayers from the priest, and a shallow mound of earth, if there is enough space left. So yes, in medieval times, life is brutal, it is short, and it is constantly under siege by death in all of its casual, unremarkable forms. You don't get to retire. You just stop showing up one day. And so, as you lie here now, back in the safety and comfort of your own time, take a deep, slow breath. Feel the softness of your bed. Listen to the quiet hum of your modern world, the romanticised version of the Middle Ages, the gallant knights, the noble ladies, the heroic battle sits a myth, a beautiful story polished by centuries of fairy tales. The truth was gritty, cruel, and deeply unfair. And yet, here is the wildest part. Through all of this, people still laughed. They still sang songs. They still told stories by the fire. They still fell in love. They still found moments of profound beauty and meaning. Not because life was easy, but because the human spirit is a stubborn, resilient thing. Even in the darkest of chapters, it insists on making space for light. So tonight, when you finally slip into your clean, warm bed, in a world with indoor plumbing, with antibiotics, with central heating, maybe say a quiet thank you. A thank you to the modern world, yes, but also a quiet thank you to those distant ancestors, the ones who fought rats and famine and feudalism so that you would never have to. Allow their story to fade now, like the last embers of a dying fire. Let the hardships of their world dissolve into a deep appreciation for the softness of yours. There is nothing more to endure tonight. There is only rest. Sleep deeply. Good night.